Hello, it's Psychocore, Why We Destroy Everything. I never told anyone this story, but 3 years ago I watched my best friend destroy the most beautiful relationship I'd ever seen. She had everything: a partner who adored her, a dream job offer, a future that looked like a fairy tale. And she burned it all down in one night. The scary part, she knew exactly what she was doing. She told me later with tears in her eyes, "I couldn't stop myself. It was like watching someone else ruin my life. That night changed how I see human behavior forever. Because I realized something terrifying. We don't just accidentally sabotage ourselves. We do it with surgical precision." Sarah was 28 when she met David. She'd been single for 3 years after a brutal breakup that left her questioning everything about love. David was different, patient, kind, genuinely interested in her thoughts. He didn't play games. He didn't disappear for days. He showed up consistently like clockwork. For 8 months, their relationship was perfect. Sarah would call me, practically glowing through the phone. "He brought me coffee this morning," she'd say. Not because I asked, but because he noticed I was tired. These small gestures meant everything to her. She'd spent years with men who made her feel invisible, and here was someone who saw her completely. Then came the job offer, a position she'd dreamed about since college. Creative director at a top agency, triple her current salary, everything she'd worked toward. David was ecstatic. He planned a celebration dinner, bought champagne, told her how proud he was. That's when something inside Sarah began to crack. "I don't deserve this," she told me over coffee the next day. Her hands were shaking. "Good things don't happen to people like me. Something's going to go wrong." I tried to reason with her, listed all her accomplishments, reminded her of her talent, her hard work. But she wasn't listening. She was staring out the window with this strange, distant look, like she was seeing something I couldn't see. The sabotage started small. She began picking fights with David over nothing: the way he chewed his food, how he folded laundry. She criticized his friends, his career choices, his family. David, bewildered, tried to understand. He suggested couples therapy. She agreed, then canceled every appointment. At work, she started missing deadlines, showing up late to important meetings, making careless mistakes she'd never made before. Her boss, who championed her promotion, began expressing concerns. Sarah would come home and rage about how unfair everything was, how nobody appreciated her efforts. David held on. He loved her, believed in her, thought this was just stress from the career change. He didn't understand that Sarah was systematically destroying every good thing in her life because, deep down, she believed she didn't deserve them. The final explosion came 3 weeks before her promotion was supposed to begin. Sarah accused David of cheating, based on absolutely nothing. When he denied it, she called him a liar. When he showed her his phone, his emails, his complete transparency, she said he was manipulative for trying to prove his innocence. That night, she slept with his brother. David found out the next morning. The look in his eyes when he confronted her. I'll never forget Sarah describing it. "He looked at me like I was a stranger," she said. "Like he was seeing me for the first time and couldn't understand what he was looking at." He left. No drama, no screaming. Just packed his things and walked out of her life forever. 2 days later, Sarah called her boss and turned down the promotion. Said she'd decided to pursue other opportunities. Then she quit her job entirely. Within a month, Sarah had dismantled everything good in her life. The relationship, the career, the future she'd spent years building. And when I asked her why, her answer chilled me to the bone. Because I knew I'd mess it up eventually, at least this way it was on my terms. This is the psychology of self-sabotage. It's not weakness or lack of willpower. It's a survival mechanism gone haywire. Sarah's unconscious mind had decided that being happy was dangerous, that success was a setup for an even bigger fall. So it took control, destroying everything before life could take it away. But here's what makes this story truly haunting. Sarah isn't unique. We all carry versions of her programming. Think about it. How many times have you been on the verge of something wonderful and suddenly felt overwhelmed by anxiety? How often have you found reasons to avoid opportunities that scared you with their potential? When was the last time you got close to someone and then started noticing all their flaws? The human mind has a twisted logic. If we destroy something ourselves, at least we maintain the illusion of control. We can't be abandoned if we leave first. We can't fail if we don't try. We can't be disappointed if we expect nothing. This programming often starts in childhood. Maybe you were praised one day and ignored the next, teaching you that good things are temporary. Maybe love came with conditions, so you learned to question any affection that seemed too easy. Maybe you watched the adults around you struggle and success became synonymous with eventual suffering. Your unconscious mind absorbed these lessons and turned them into protective strategies. If I keep my expectations low, I won't be hurt. If I push people away before they can leave, I stay safe. If I sabotage my success, I avoid the terror of having something to lose. But here's the cruel irony. These protective mechanisms end up creating the exact outcomes they're trying to prevent. By avoiding disappointment, we guarantee it. By pushing love away, we ensure loneliness. By sabotaging success, we confirm our worst fears about ourselves. Sarah's story doesn't end with the destruction, though. 6 months after losing everything, she found herself in a therapist's office, finally ready to understand why she kept hurting herself. The process was brutal. She had to face years of unconscious beliefs, childhood wounds, and protective patterns that had become prisons. She learned that her father had left when she was 7, promising to stay in touch and then disappearing completely. Her mother, devastated, had spent years telling Sarah that men always leave, that counting on anyone was foolish. Without realizing it, Sarah had internalized the message that love was temporary and that she was ultimately unlovable. When David showed up offering genuine love, Sarah's unconscious mind went into panic mode. This couldn't be real. This wouldn't last. Better to end it before it ended her. The work wasn't about positive thinking or affirmations, it was archaeological, digging up buried beliefs and examining them in the light. I don't deserve love. Where did this come from? Is it actually true? Success means I'll lose everything. What evidence supports this? What evidence contradicts it? Slowly, Sarah began to see her patterns. She noticed when her inner critic got loudest, usually right before something good was about to happen. She recognized her sabotage strategies, picking fights, creating chaos, finding reasons to quit. Most importantly, she learned to pause between the impulse to destroy and the action. The healing wasn't linear. She'd make progress, then slip back into old patterns. She started dating again and caught herself inventing reasons to end promising relationships. She took freelance work and noticed herself procrastinating before important deadlines. But now she had awareness, and awareness creates choice. Today, Sarah is in a relationship that's been stable for over a year. She's built her own creative agency and for the first time in her life is letting herself enjoy success without waiting for disaster. She still feels the old impulses sometimes, the urge to run when things get too good, the voice that tells her she doesn't deserve happiness. But now she recognizes these as echoes from her past, not truths about her future. The most profound thing she told me recently: I used to think self-sabotage was about fear of failure. But really it was about fear of success, fear of having something beautiful that could be taken away. I had to learn that the risk of loss is the price of love, and it's worth paying. Understanding self-sabotage isn't about blame or shame. It's about recognizing that these patterns once served a purpose. They kept you safe in situations where safety was scarce. The problem is that our unconscious minds don't update their programming automatically. They keep running protection software designed for old threats even when the environment has completely changed. Let me tell you about Marcus. He grew up in a house where achievement was everything, but nothing was ever enough. Straight A's meant you should have gotten A+. Making the team meant you should have been captain. His parents meant well, but their constant pushing created a monster in his head. A voice that whispered, "You're never good enough," no matter what he accomplished. By 35, Marcus had built a successful consulting firm. But every time a big opportunity arose, something strange would happen. He'd start drinking more. He'd pick fights with key employees. He'd make inexplicably poor decisions that jeopardized everything he'd worked for. The pattern was so consistent it looked intentional. And in a way, it was. Marcus's unconscious mind had learned that success meant scrutiny, pressure, and the inevitable disappointment of never being enough. So it protected him the only way it knew how, by ensuring he never got too successful. The breaking point came when he landed a $1 million contract, the kind of deal that would set him up for life. That night, instead of celebrating, Marcus got drunk and sent an email to the client that was so inappropriate, so unprofessional, that they pulled out immediately. His business partner stared at him the next morning with a mixture of fury and confusion. "It's like you don't want to succeed," she said. "It's like you're afraid of your own potential." She was right. Marcus was terrified of success because success meant visibility, and visibility meant being judged. His childhood had taught him that being seen meant being found lacking. Better to stay small, stay safe, stay invisible. This is how self-sabotage works. It's not random self-destruction. It's a sophisticated defense system that analyzes threats and neutralizes them before they can hurt you. The problem is that this system was calibrated in childhood, when you had no control over your environment and genuine threats to your emotional survival existed. But what happens when a child who needed to stay invisible to avoid criticism grows up and needs to be visible to succeed? What happens when someone who learned that love always comes with conditions encounters unconditional love? The old system kicks in, treating love and success as threats to be eliminated. Consider Emma, who sabotaged every relationship when it reached the 6-month mark. Like clockwork, she'd find something wrong with her partner. Too clingy, too distant, too ambitious, not ambitious enough. She had a talent for finding the one thing that would justify ending things, and she wielded it with surgical precision. Emma's sabotage wasn't about not wanting love. It was about not believing she deserved it. Her father had been an alcoholic who alternated between showering her with affection and disappearing for days. Her mother, overwhelmed and bitter, had often told Emma she was too much, too loud, too needy, too emotional. The message Emma internalized was clear. Love is conditional and temporary. People leave. If you get too attached, you'll be devastated when they inevitably abandon you. So Emma developed a strategy. Leave first. Control the narrative. End it before it ends you. The 6-month mark was significant because that's when Emma typically started feeling genuinely attached. That's when the relationship began to matter. And that's when her defense system would sound the alarm. Danger, attachment detected, initiate termination sequence. She'd start noticing flaws she'd previously overlooked. She'd magnify small incompatibilities into deal breakers. She'd create tests that her partners couldn't possibly pass. And when they finally gave up, exhausted by her pushback, Emma would feel a complicated mix of relief and devastation. Relief that she'd avoided abandonment, devastation that she'd destroyed something beautiful. The cruel irony is that Emma's strategy to avoid abandonment guaranteed it. By pushing everyone away, she ensured she'd end up alone. Her protection mechanism had become her prison. This pattern extends beyond romantic relationships. Think about the artist who never finishes their masterpiece because completed work can be criticized. The entrepreneur who comes up with brilliant ideas but never executes them because execution means risking failure. The student who doesn't study for the important exam because if you don't try, you can't really fail. These aren't character flaws. They're survival strategies that once made perfect sense. Take the child who was harshly criticized every time they made a mistake. That child learns that mistakes are dangerous, that imperfection leads to emotional pain. So they develop perfectionism as a shield. But perfectionism becomes procrastination. Because if you never finish anything, it can't be judged. The very mechanism designed to protect them from criticism ends up preventing them from ever succeeding. Or consider the child who learned that expressing needs led to disappointment. Maybe their parents were overwhelmed. Maybe resources were scarce. Maybe asking for things was seen as selfish. That child learns to need nothing from anyone. They become fiercely independent, self-sufficient, unable to accept help or support. This serves them well in childhood, but it becomes problematic in adulthood when relationships require vulnerability and interdependence. Sarah's story illustrates another common pattern: the fear of having something to lose. When you've experienced significant loss, death, abandonment, betrayal, your nervous system becomes hypervigilant about potential losses. Having something good means having something that can be taken away. So the unconscious mind calculates that it's safer to have nothing than to risk losing everything. This is why people sometimes sabotage themselves right when things are going best. The promotion, the relationship, the creative breakthrough, these aren't just opportunities, they're liabilities. They're things that can be lost. And loss is the one thing your system is designed to prevent at all costs. The mind creates elaborate justifications for this sabotage. I wasn't ready for the promotion anyway. He was probably going to leave eventually. Success would have changed me. These stories help us maintain the illusion that we're in control, that we chose destruction rather than having it chosen for us. But underneath the stories lies a deeper truth. We're still running on programming written by a child who was trying to survive in an adult world they couldn't control. Breaking these patterns requires more than willpower or positive thinking. It requires rewiring the fundamental beliefs about safety, worth, and possibility that were encoded in your nervous system decades ago. The first step is recognition. Most self-sabotage happens unconsciously. We tell ourselves we're being realistic, practical, or self-protective. We don't see the pattern because we're inside it. Start paying attention to your thoughts and behaviors when good things happen. Do you immediately start worrying about what could go wrong? Do you find reasons why you don't deserve the good thing? Do you start creating problems where none existed before? Notice your internal dialogue, the voice that says this is too good to be true, or I always mess things up, or people like me don't get happy endings. That's not objective reality speaking. That's old programming running its protection protocol. The second step is understanding the origin of these patterns. Most self-sabotaging behaviors made perfect sense in their original context. The child who learned not to get their hopes up because disappointment was too painful. The teenager who learned that standing out meant becoming a target. The young adult who learned that vulnerability led to betrayal. These strategies weren't wrong. They were adaptive responses to real threats. The problem is that our unconscious minds don't automatically update their threat assessment when circumstances change. A 40-year-old successful professional might still be running protection software designed for a powerless 8-year-old. Understanding this doesn't excuse the behavior, but it creates compassion for the part of you that's still trying to keep you safe in ways that no longer serve you. The third step is creating new neural pathways. This is where the real work happens. Every time you catch yourself in a sabotage pattern and choose differently, you're literally rewiring your brain. Every time you notice the urge to push someone away and instead move closer, you're updating your programming. This process is slow and non-linear. You'll have breakthroughs followed by setbacks. You'll think you've conquered a pattern only to find it resurface under stress. This is normal. Healing isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. You'll revisit the same issues at deeper levels as you develop the capacity to handle more complex emotional territory. The fourth step is learning to tolerate success, love, and happiness without immediately looking for the escape hatch. This might be the hardest part because it requires staying present with vulnerable feelings instead of numbing them or running from them. When something good happens, instead of immediately shifting to worry mode, practice sitting with the good feeling. Notice what it's like in your body to feel happy, loved, or successful. Notice what stories your mind tells you about why you can't have this, shouldn't want this, don't deserve this. These stories aren't truth. They're old protective mechanisms trying to keep you safe. You can acknowledge them without obeying them. Thank you for trying to protect me, but I can handle this now. The fifth step is building a support system that can witness your growth without trying to fix you or rescue you from discomfort. Healing happens in relationship. We need people who can see our patterns without judgment, who can remind us of our worth when we forget, who can celebrate our successes without making us feel guilty for having good things. This might mean finding a therapist who understands trauma and attachment. It might mean joining a support group with people who share similar struggles. It might mean being vulnerable with friends or family members who can handle your growth without feeling threatened by it. Most importantly, it means learning to be that supportive presence for yourself. To notice your self-sabotaging thoughts without attacking yourself for having them. To be curious about your patterns rather than ashamed of them. To treat yourself with the same compassion you'd offer a good friend going through a difficult time. Recovery from self-sabotage isn't about never feeling the old impulses again. It's about developing a different relationship with them. Instead of being controlled by these patterns, you learn to recognize them, understand them, and make conscious choices about how to respond. Sarah still feels the impulse to run when things get too good. Marcus still hears the voice that tells him he's not good enough. Emma still gets nervous when relationships deepen past the danger zone. But now they have tools, awareness, and support. They can feel the old programming without being controlled by it. The goal isn't to eliminate these protective parts of yourself. They developed for good reasons and still serve functions. The goal is to update them, to let them know that the circumstances have changed and different strategies are now needed. This is ongoing work. There's no graduation ceremony where you officially overcome self-sabotage. Instead, there's a gradual expansion of your capacity to handle good things, to trust in your own worthiness, to believe that happiness and success are possible for someone like you. Some days you'll nail it. You'll catch yourself in an old pattern and consciously choose a different response. You'll accept love without looking for its hidden agenda. You'll pursue opportunities without manufacturing reasons to quit. Other days you'll slip back into familiar patterns. You'll sabotage something important, push someone away, or talk yourself out of something you really want. These setbacks aren't evidence that you're not making progress. They're part of the process. What changes isn't the presence of these patterns, but your relationship to them. Instead of being unconscious and automatic, they become conscious and choice-based. Instead of being shameful secrets, they become understandable responses to old wounds. Instead of being permanent character flaws, they become skills that need updating. The most powerful realization in this process is that you have more control than you thought. Not control over outcomes. Life is too complex for that. But control over your responses. Control over whether you listen to the old programming or choose something different. Control over whether you let fear make your decisions or step forward despite the fear. Sarah learned this when she decided to stay in therapy even when every instinct told her to quit. Marcus learned it when he chose to celebrate a success instead of immediately looking for what could go wrong. Emma learned it when she felt the urge to end a perfectly good relationship and chose to talk about her fears instead. These moments of choice are where transformation happens. Not in dramatic revelations or sudden enlightenment, but in the small daily decisions to respond differently to the same old triggers. If you see yourself in these stories, know that change is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible. The patterns that feel so solid and permanent are actually just well-worn neural pathways, and the brain's capacity for creating new pathways continues throughout your entire life. You don't have to remain trapped by survival strategies that once served you but now limit you. You can learn to receive love without suspicion, pursue dreams without self-sabotage, and build a life that aligns with your true desires rather than your deepest fears. If you recognize yourself in this story, you're not broken, you're not weak, you're human carrying protective patterns that once made sense but now hold you back. The first step isn't fixing yourself, it's understanding yourself. Noticing when you sabotage, what triggers it, what stories you tell yourself about why you can't have good things. The journey from self-destruction to self-compassion is long and difficult. It requires facing uncomfortable truths about your past, challenging beliefs you've held for decades, and learning to tolerate the vulnerability that comes with letting good things into your life. But here's what I know after watching Sarah transform her life. On the other side of self-sabotage lies a version of you that you've never met. A version that can accept love without looking for its hidden agenda. A version that can pursue dreams without manufacturing reasons to quit. A version that can hold success gently without the constant fear that it will be ripped away. The choice is always yours. You can keep destroying what you want most, telling yourself it's safer that way. Or you can do the hardest thing of all. You can decide that you deserve the very things you've spent your life pushing away. Sarah chose healing. The question is, what will you choose? If you enjoyed this video, please support the channel. Like, share, and subscribe. Please leave a comment telling us what you think of this video.